America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. So much has happened in the last week. Last week was Grace Agenda. There's after parties, the downtown
with a Z
block party. I'm dead. I'm died.
Is that what's wrong with you?
I'm died. I'm just so tired.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Also, we had Logan from Crux Art come in, cruxart.org. Come in and actually install some really cool glass studio art.
Shiny.
We still haven't got all the lighting around it and all that stuff. There's still some more, production we're going to put around it. So it might be a little dark behind Knox. It's not Knox. It's just a little dark.
I mean, he's dark.
He's dark.
But he's not that dark.
Yeah.
But he is dark.
And then we also have that. So we had all these changes. We actually rewired some of the studio. There's kind of a bunch that you don't really see that has happened. So we're catching up. And then next week, beginning August 24th. Is that Monday? Is that the 24th Monday? Whatever that Monday is next week. We're actually starting a whole new show schedule.
26th.
Yeah. So we'll be actually streaming live. So starting August 26th, Monday, August 26th, we'll be streaming live on Mondays at 3 o'clock, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 o'clock. That's our goal as long as the Lord allows us to. And so we're going to be streaming live on these shows because there's just a lot of going on. And the live streaming is actually kind of rebirthed itself a little bit.
At least on X.
Yeah. So we're always trying variations to improve in what we're doing and everything. So we're going to stream live for a little bit and see how that goes. And if it's better, of course, we'll still be dropping that live show in the podcast format and everything. So, but next week, you can kind of put it on your calendar. We stream live 3 p.m. Pacific time on Mondays, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time on those days and everything. So pretty excited about that change.
The mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty necessary to preserve God-given rights. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. We are free craftsmen. Body armor is a tool of liberty. We create tools of liberty. Free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny wherever it appears. God has given us the tools of liberty needed to defend the rights he's bestowed upon us. Armored Republic is honored to offer you those tools. So visit them today at AR500armor.com.
I mean, it's no secret that the Republican Party is a mess. And it's a mess, and I think in a lot of ways it's because they want to sacrifice truth for unity.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Right?
Yep.
And before I get there, I got my Trump membership card and key tag in the mail.
What is that?
To me. I don't know, but it's a.
What is it?
You get the.
What does it open?
The card. I don't know.
How much credit's on it?
So is there a credit? Does it help your credit score?
It's a trap.
So this is a Trump National Committee 2024 membership card and key tag. I've never signed up anything with Trump. Obviously, they have my physical address.
Yeah.
But they're just trying to drive donations. That's all.
The Trump National Committee.
Sure, you haven't signed up, Gabe.
Yeah.
Sure.
It says that you're a leader.
I'm a leader?
Yeah.
In the efforts to re-elect Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. Oh, okay.
Well, there
there
might be some connections in there.
So it's not a Republican card; it's a Trump card.
No, exactly, a Trump card. That's why I found this so funny. It's like it's not even like a GOP card.
The Republican is now changing their names to Trump.
Trump's rebranding the Republican Party.
What are you, Democrat or Trump? That's it.
So we've talked about this on the show before. Here in Idaho, you kind of see this divide happening in the Republican Party, kind of between the old guard and what is probably best called maybe the young, restless, and right guard, kind of coming up.
Doesn't really roll off your tongue.
Young,
good.
Restless, right.
Let's work on that.
So close. We need to work on that nomenclature. But that's
young,
also
restless, and reckless.
That's also happening nationwide too,
right,
in the Republican Party.
But that's not it. That's not all. So you have the old guard and you have this new thing, but in the middle of it, TPUSA
Yes.
is actually doing something, I don't know, a little different, I think. I don't know. I memean, maybe they're part of the Young Restless in a sense.
I think they are. Remember.
Charlie Kirk, certainly is coming out of that. But I get the impression that he's trying to aim for something not just young and restless, but actually something more mature and orthodox. Yeah. And I think that's particularly indicated by the fact that he recently interviewed Pastor Doug Wilson. Yeah. And then invited him to speak at TPUSA, at their national faith event down in Florida back in July 28th. It was a Sunday morning actually, and so Doug got to preach.
Had a church.
Charlie asked him to preach a sermon.
I know he said,
he specifically preached.
Please preach a sermon. You're a pastor, and so Doug got to preach to this crowd and. We need more of this. I mean, the whole message is really glorious. But listen to Pastor Doug.
I want to begin by insisting that it is in fact a story. This may be the point that is tripping you up. It doesn't look or feel like a story to you, but rather like a cafeteria food fight. It doesn't look like an old-fashioned cafeteria food fight either, but rather like a cafeteria food fight at the monkey house at the zoo, where all the chimps are amped up on meth. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to anything. Contradictory data keeps flying past us, making that whooshing sound, and the conspiracy bros are having a hard time keeping up with it all. Well, who is telling the story then? It would not be the Sons of Anarchy. It is not the deep state. It is not the CIA or the FBI. It is not the minions of George Soros. Although they would have us believe that they are in charge, as the prophet Isaiah pointed out, all that these petty lords of the earth can do is breathe through their noses, as Isaiah says in chapter 2, verse 22. They are midges in a sunbeam plotting to overthrow the sun. In the second psalm, the kings of the earth took their stand against the Lord and against his anointed. Psalm 2, verses 1 and 2. And what was God's response? He laughed, and he laughed them to derision, it says. And why? At the end of their very busy day, what did these enemies of God actually do? What did Herod and Pontius Pilate and the Gentiles and the Jews, Acts 4:26 through 28, what did they accomplish? Well, they ushered in the salvation of the world. That's what they did. They arranged for my forgiveness and for yours, to be purchased by the blood of the Son of God.
Man.
That's going down at TPUSA.
It's incredible.
Wow.
And that is the future. That's the only future of the Republican Party.
If the Republican Party is going to exist.
If it's going to exist, if it's going to exist as something good and not just a continued watered down version of the DNC. Which is what, again, who was it? Conservatism is the shadow of progressivism. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it frequently is. Yeah. We're going to do the same things 10 years later, 20 years later, just a little bit slower. But this is a different.
Yeah. And what's amazing, make no mistake about what TPUSA is. Now we've seen Charlie kind of grow in his theology and maybe some of his cultural. He used to be a little more friendly to the LGBT side of things, or a little more welcoming, and and he's kind of I think gotten past some.
It was a little more frat boyish too at times.
At times, but so I'm friends with board members on TPUSA, and it's $100 million organization,
right?
I mean,
and they're focusing on college students.
They got college groups.
Yeah, they always have
college campuses. They also have a whole get out the vote registration, vote process that they're implementing in almost every state. I mean, it's quite the organization that Charlie's putting together, and it really is. If the GOP. If I was the GOP, I would try to figure out how to kind of co-opt the movement. It's like you remember the what's in the
put a plant in there. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, you remember the
or just get in the driver's seat of this and steer the TPUSA.
Yeah, and that happened with the in the.
We're just gonna keep talking what he thinks and tries to figure out
what was the organization? Bill, you might even know this. The organization in the early 2000s that was like all about taxation and lowering taxes.
Tea Party.
Yes. And And that's what the Republican Party did with the Tea Party.
Yeah, they co-opted them.
They co-opted them.
They're like, we'll do all that. We'll do all that.
That's exactly right.
But not really.
That's exactly
But not
right.
really.
How do you think that? Well, how do you think that the TPUSA is going to steer clear of that with the Republican Party? Because the
By
Republican
inviting
Party,
people like Doug to
By
speak
inviting
at your
Doug
conference.
Wilson
Yeah.
and letting him like completely like just go.
Yeah.
No strings attached.
part of what I was thinking about with this, I think I'm going to say two things, but one of them is I was wondering why does TPUSA have to exist? And I think the reason that they have to exist is because way too many Christians have been sending their kids to government schools. We were talking about this earlier, Pastor. You got to remember, I was trying to find a parallel on the other side on the left that is like TPUSA.
And what does DNC have?
What does the DNC have? And
I know.
Yeah.
The public schools.
They actually have a farm ground in the government schools that
12 years.
breathe them right into the DNC. There is like, do not pass go, do not. You get your socialism jacket, you're graduated right to the DNC.
So you
right?
know when we talked about the NEA, the National Education Association, a guy emailed us and said, "That's my aunt."
Okay.
Speaking, she's the leader of the NEA, and he said, "We've had such a difficult time trying to get to my family to try to figure out how to disconnect that education is our savior because that's how they look at it."
But here's what I want to say. That girl's nephew listens to Cross
I was going to
Politics.
say, she's in trouble.
No, 100%.
They are in trouble.
That's what I was like. I was like, how did you find cross politics out of your family?
So on the one hand, you're like, this is so hard. This is my aunt. But I'm like, But her nephew, like, Jesus got him.
That's a post mill right there.
No,
I
right.
never thought about it.
We got NEA people listening to us.
I know you got more to say.
Yeah.
I want to go to the next clip.
Okay.
Because this is all coming together because what Doug is preaching is a high octane sovereignty of God, in particular, the way that God works in history.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You were born for this hour. All of this surrounding mayhem is our duty station. We were put here on purpose. God did it deliberately. We were written into this role by the author of the story, and he is a good, wise, and perfect author. Chesterton once said wonderfully that the one taste of paradise on this earth was to fight in a losing cause and then not lose. Let me say that for you again. The one taste of paradise on this earth was to fight in a losing cause and then not lose. J.R.R. Tolkien called it eucatastrophe, an astonishing deliverance at the end that was predictable given everything that went before, and yet somehow nobody in the adventure predicted it. This is what we need is a black swan reformation, a black swan revival, a black swan eucatastrophe, an event that is seen by all historians as inevitable after the fact, but which no one saw coming. Chesterton also said, in the everlasting man, and this is an appropriate line, an appropriate thought, an appropriate thing to meditate on. He said in the everlasting man that Christianity has died many times. The Christian faith has died many times, but this should not distress us at all, for we worship a God who knows the way out of the grave.
It's you have high octane sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
And he gives. I think we have a clip here in a minute of his even very, very clear presentation of the gospel.
Yeah.
But then he's taking that gospel and he's pushing it into all the corners.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of republicanism.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of conservatism. It's not just the gospel. It's not just that there is a God, but it's that he's a God who rules over history. And the central sign of that, of course, is the gospel itself. But it didn't just happen, but God planned it. God didn't just plan it. God planned it and planned it to happen through the machinations of evil men.
Yeah.
Pontius Pilate, the Jewish leaders, the Jews, the Gentiles.
Yeah.
This idea of eucatastrophe, this idea of the thing that you think it's all going dark, it's all going black, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then God says, watch this. And he knows the judo move that flips all the pressure and all the power and it spins right into his hands.
Right.
This is what he's been doing since the beginning. But I think that really is a different kind of conservatism. That's a different kind of Republican Party.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the discussion surrounding this sort of new right, the new energetic right, has to do with how do we think about power?
Right.
How do we think about
winning and losing?
Authority? How do we think about winning and losing? And I think there's been a shyness, maybe at best, maybe an apathy among many Christians and conservatives that don't want to talk about power.
Yeah.
They just want to talk about rights. They just want to talk about freedom, liberty, but not authority, not power.
Yeah.
And maybe in the best sense because they don't want to be Mussolini. They don't want to be the dictator.
Well, I think part of it is too is that they have actually done some bad things with power.
Exactly. That's what that's exactly what I mean.
And so they don't know what to do.
Who's
like
they?
I think a lot of people, leaders,
Adam's race.
Yeah, Look at
Babel,
our
government.
Just
Babel.
you can look all up. Look, if you really want to know who, look at all the people that they're trying to guilt out of power, and you'll find who that is, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's what they're using. They're using history. They're using you were this, you were like this, and we made some mistakes and we've repented and moving on. Yeah. We don't do that. Instead, we're guilty. Oh man, we did miss that, I guess. Right? And it's like, oh no. Now they say we'll fix it,
right?
And so then we give that up. So there is I think this tendency for people, the old guard, who's kind of been through that. They've gotten their scars. I don't want to disregard some of them because they've had their battles and they've been good. But the old guard is feeling the guilt of that now, and they don't know what to do with the guilt.
Right. And they were in power for a long time.
Well, the old guard shut down
number of years.
COVID.
Well, yeah,
during COVID.
But go back further. I mean, like there were a lot of things that like. They left on the table. I mean, it didn't get done or left it worse. I mean, it was a majority Republican appointed Supreme Court that gave us Roe versus Wade
in the first place. That's right.
But here you have an articulation of power in the sovereignty of God. Number one.
Yeah, that's right.
Number two, an articulation of power in the sovereignty of God that is not according to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not according to the machinations of men. But it also isn't just to lay down and take it.
It's actually advancing.
Yeah. It's actually, let's win, let's struggle. But we've got to do it playing it God's way, with God's tools, with God's weapons, which frequently put you in what appears to be a weaker position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not saying we want to lose. That's not saying we want to lay down and take it. That means we want to win, but we want to win with God on our side.
Well,
go ahead. I think go ahead. Do it. No, part of it is that as he's talking, I'm thinking like, man, we have no idea what advancing and winning looks like. The world has framed it through government schools or whatever else, has framed us to thinking that their form of winning is winning, which is the grasping for power. Right. When Jesus comes on the scene, they're all in that grasping for power moment, and he's like, "Here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to go die."
Right.
No, you shouldn't, Jesus. Get behind me, Satan. Right? Like that was
and
it.
A bunch of the Christian nationalists were like, "No, you don't.
No, you don't. That's not it.
We need you.
That's losing.
We need our prince."
That's the paradox, though. Is like, wait, Lord, how do you do this from death?
Right.
But how is winning? Because death is not the winning. What? You can't win from dying. You don't win like that.
Right.
But most of our narratives always end at death, and that's the biggest problem. When God writes a narrative, death isn't the end.
Right.
But all we can see is that. And so when we have this short, and I think we'll talk about this more, but when we have this short version of how the narrative should go, all we see is 5 years.
Right.
Every 4 years. Most important election you'll ever have.
Right.
Oh, if that's the case, we can only win now. If that, we're done.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's
God
not,
is sovereign.
It's not 20 years. It's not 35. It's not your lifetime. We should be thinking like, man, what is my grandkids going to have that I've built for them, or that I've worked hard to develop, so that this isn't an issue, right? It's not just one election. It's not just 2 elections. It's a lifetime of giving.
Right.
And dying. This is just to recommend a book right now that's so important for this moment is Death by Living from Nate Wilson.
Yeah.
Go get it, because that's really the answer. It's like when you have short-term post-millennialist ideas, you will fall into prey to only seeing it at death and not after.
And for the record, I mean, this is actually what happened 100 years ago. So 100 years ago, early 1900s.
Yes, that's right.
Postmillennialism was popular.
Yep.
We have been here before. If you're new to this story and you're like, oh, postmillennialism, never heard of that. Nobody's a postmillennialist. Yeah, because 100 years ago, we pooched it. All the postmillennialists went liberal. All the postmillennialists embraced the social gospel.
Wow.
Well, it went Catholic too.
Yeah,
they got heavy Catholic.
All of them, but they were post-mill.
Yep.
All of them were. And that's where the fundamentalists came. They responded, they reacted to that, and then went dispensational, like the opposite.
Right.
Because they were like, if you get too excited about the future, but it was short-term future thinking. It was like, we need to get the government to fund this now. We need to get the gears of power, the levers of power. We will usher in a Christian age. That is what they said.
Yes.
Okay.
That puts a lot of pieces together. This next clip coming up is probably my favorite clip of Doug's talk.
So who is this true author? Christians believe that the author of the story that you are in is Almighty God. He turns the hearts of kings in whichever way he pleases. He numbers the hairs of your head. He decrees the position and velocity of every atom in every asteroid in the darkness of deep space. There is nothing in this cosmos that is outside his determinative purpose and will. Do you see that yellow mutt running around on the last day of the world? Before the world began, before ancient times, God determined the number of hairs that would be on that yellow dog's back. God is God, and there is no other. From our vantage point, things certainly look dire, but that is from our vantage point. I can assure you of one thing. God in heaven is not looking down on the 2024 presidential election cycle in a panic. The thrones and dominions are not all in a doodah. The angels are not scrambling and running through the heavenly courts yelling, Plan B, Plan B. We are in a storm, no doubt about it, but the tops of all of our clouds are radiant and white. Not only does God turn the hearts of kings, but he also turns the heads of former presidents at just the right moment. Such that the bullet grazes the ear, leaving behind the red signature of providence. This was not an example of God lurching forward to intervene in our affairs, but rather an instance of God showing us the steadiness of his hand. I'm not here remarking on the greatness of Donald Trump, but rather on the greatness of God. That remarkable event in Pennsylvania was no more providential than the breath in your lungs right this minute. God orchestrates everything all the time through his providence, but sometimes he lets us see it. Christians confess this truth, but the secularists deny it. And when they deny that God is sovereign over all, they are never content with a simple denial. When they, by their doctrine, have denied the Almighty the prerogatives of deity, the first thing they see after that is a job opening. This is why they want you to sink deeper and deeper into their cauldron of boiling totalitarians. They aspire to deity, and they intend to suffocate you with their good intentions. They, like Isaiah's Lucifer, want to ascend the sides of the north. Isaiah 14, 13 through 15. This is why they want cameras at every intersection. This is why they want to record your every keystroke. This is why they want to create algorithms in which you are to live and move and have your being. The logic is simple enough. If there is no God over the state, then the state is God.
Watch all that. You've got the absolute sovereignty of God, just underlined, and all the way down to the attempted assassination, former President Trump.
And God was sovereign over that.
God was sovereign over that. He turns the hearts of kings. He turns the heads of former presidents. So that the bullet grazes them. What does he say? What did he say there? The blood mark of providence, signature of providence. Like,
great quote.
God, I was here, right? But his point is, but That's not a lurch. That's
Yeah.
not an anomaly. That's what's always true all the time. But sometimes he makes it clear.
Yeah.
Okay. But then what he does is, but notice what he does. He says, now that's true. That's the actual world we live in.
Right.
But what the secularists are trying to do is they want to deny that God exists. They would say we live in a materialistic world. We evolved from pond scum. And he says, and for them though, that's not them saying there's nobody at the top. It's them saying there's a job opening, and they want to ascend, the heights, like Lucifer, and so they want to have this totalitarian, tolerance, he calls it, this Big Brother state with cameras in every intersection.
Yeah.
But notice that there's a juxtaposition there of power. What does God do with his power? He puts breath in your lungs.
Yep.
He causes bullets to graze ears.
He gives life.
He gives life. What does Lucifer do with his power? What do all those who imitate Lucifer do with their power? They crush, they maim, they destroy, they kill, and they have to haunt your every step. They have to read your emails. They have to tell you to put a mask on and take the jab, and they have cameras at every intersection.
That's right.
That's the difference between two different kinds of power.
Right.
You've got satanic power because it's not actually sovereign, has to haunt you.
That's right.
But God, who is actually sovereign, sets you free.
Right.
Man, Pastor, that's good.
And so this goes back to God's not running plan B.
Right.
The angels are not in a panic. Right. There's no plan B here. And those who are, this is why we always say worship is central.
Yeah, that's it.
Because what we're saying is it's only those who have fallen down and submitted to the sovereignty of the living God, who know that he has all things in hand and in control and is good.
That's right.
Who know I can and must play my part. But I play my part like that bullet.
That's right.
Whizzing by Trump's head.
Yeah.
I play my part by being the husband he's called me to be, the father he's called me to be, the pastor he's called me to be, the businessman he's called me, the politician he's called me to be, the police officer he's called me to be, the judge. I do my part, but I'm in his story. That makes you that makes you think about power differently.
Right.
Than someone who says, I've got to make it happen or else it won't.
Right.
And just don't miss the other story. That's fantastic. And I'm going to mess half of what you just set up. But don't miss the other story that's happening right in front of us. Pastor Wilson is talking at TPUSA in front of thousands of people.
Right.
He's not trying to get up on somebody's stage. He's not begging to go talk. He's over in a little small town in northern Idaho.
Yep.
He's preaching solidly to his people, giving them wisdom. He's starting schools. He's starting colleges. He's loving his grandkids. And he shows up now to this massive event for the next Republicans that are going to be running our nation. And he's discipling them.
That's right.
Yep.
Don't miss. That's winning.
That's right.
Did you see the progression though?
Yeah.
That's winning.
Right.
Be faithful right where you are and do the hard things, right?
But what we want to put this in a microwave.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is years.
We want that Black Swan revival.
That's right.
In a microwave.
Yeah, like a microwave dinner.
We want that Reformation you just need to pull the lever, you just need to get in power, you just need to win. It's like, yes, we need to win. Absolutely need to win, but we need to win in God's way.
Right.
And God wins with leaven in dough.
That's right.
God wins with seed that dies in the ground.
That's right.
God wins with moms reading stories to their kids. That's how God wins.
That's right.
He wins. But notice, this is a glorious example that God's given us in Pastor Wilson.
Yeah.
And in what he's been allowed to do in Moscow. All grace, all a gift. But notice, he's been preaching this for 50 years.
Right.
And you can't look at this and say, well, a lot of good that did us. No, a lot of good that did us.
That's
I mean,
right.
it works.
That's right.
And I think there's a temptation to think that it doesn't work.
Right.
Right.
That God's way doesn't work.
That's right.
Or
it's too slow.
Well, and because there have been pietists that just said, just me and Jesus in my Bible and in the middle of nowhere and try to hide from.
Preach your gospel and mind your business.
But Pastor Wilson's they're not hiding from culture. He's bringing the gospel to collide with culture. One more clip. We got one more.
You are, thank God, not actually living in the world that the bad guys are attempting to build. They are attempting to build it, but you don't actually live there. You are living in a world, however, where they are certainly making the attempt. And we shouldn't be spooked by the attempt. They are consumed with an insane desire to make the world according to their designs because a very green and leprous libido dominandi has them by the throat. And because their lust for this sovereignty has far outstripped their competence, everything under their charge is disintegrating. They are in the position of the sorcerer's apprentice, and everything is spiraling away from them. Pieces are flying everywhere. Your preparations for living in a time like this include recognizing that God is the author of all of it. But more is needed than a simple recognition that God is the author. While such recognition is more than God's enemies will admit, and it's good as far as it goes, it is not sufficient. You are a character in the story that he is telling, but more than a simple acknowledgement of that is needed. You have an author of your story, but you need to be on good terms with the author of this story. Jesus and his disciples were figures in the gospel story, certainly, but so were Pilate and Herod and Judas. It is no great blessing simply to be in the story. The bad guys are in the story too. So what does it mean to be on good terms with your God? The Bible calls it reconciliation. We are a sinful people living in a fallen world. All of us were by nature objects of wrath, Ephesians 2:3, and we were enemies of God in our hearts and our minds, in our hands and in our mouths. All of us. In this dire situation, God sent his Son to offer terms of reconciliation. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. That's what it says in Romans 5:10. We are put right with God when we recognize our own complicity in the sin that surrounds us, and we repent of it. We repent of it while looking at the cross of Christ, where he died as an efficacious substitute for all of his people. He died there in fulfillment of the scriptures. He was buried in accordance with the scriptures, and God raised him to life so that we could walk in newness of life. On the basis of this gospel, you must be converted to God. You must be born again.
Notice here that Doug's arguing that everyone that's outside of Christ is trying to build.
Yeah.
They're trying to build.
Right.
You think, and of course, Doug multiple times references Psalm 2.
Yeah.
Like God's enemies, they try to devise things. They can't get it to fruition.
And he laughs.
But if you're in Christ, everything you do that's holy and good and right, it's building.
Right.
And it's building you're building your family, you're building your church, you're building community.
And you're wielding power.
Yeah. In God's way.
Yeah.
Not the world's way.
It's not whether, but which.
And so all these people outside of Christ who are trying to build are like kids in a sandbox. You know, you can see the sand kind of form. You can see the little sandcastle try to grow. You can see,
takes a little shape,
but it actually does not ultimately impact God's sovereign will in his creation.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had talked about before my concern with the Republican Party, and I didn't think they were doing very well. I still don't think they're doing very well.
No.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I think William Wolf, you and a few others were making the point that there are people now inside of the Republican Party that weren't there so long ago.
Right.
And maybe we've had some blinders on of how we've looked at the Republican Party as if we were the ones running it. That's some arrogance on our side, that's for sure, right? Because we haven't been, when you go and look historically, right? We've kind of been pandered to. But when you see this front and center of what's going to be the next Republican Party, they're coming, they're fueling this, right? TPUSA is going to fuel and disciple the next people in.
Right.
And when you see men like Pastor Wilson and other men who are inside the Republican Party fighting like this, Dusty Deavers, you say, oh man, I want to get behind guys like this. I want to be the ones discipling these young minds and being supportive of them. I don't think this is a great time now to charge. Yep. This is a great time now to charge.
With this kind of message.
With this kind of, and this is the only way to win.
Right.
This is the only way with long-term blessing. Yeah. So I can't say it enough. Go listen to all of this. TPUSA, Pastor Wilson absolutely killed it. And pray that God would give us thousands more of men like that who are willing to give their lives for 50 to 60 years or more just to build that haven of culture and community to have something to fight back with.
Well, I'd also say on the Reform side of things, like in the kind of Reformed Baptist, Reformed Presbyterian, kind of our right. A lot of people have bashed Charlie. But I think you should be praying for Charlie. There's a lot going on there with TPUSA. I really do hope that TPUSA. I'd rather have TPUSA be the Republican Party than the Republican Party be the Republican Party.
Well, if they keep inviting Doug,
I mean,
exactly.
That's what they need to do.
Yep. So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Crust Politics. Thank you, Bill. One person in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Garraway. Thank you, Bill.
Legacy media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Crust Politics. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.